Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we are going to celebrate our 100th episode.
Yeah!
And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
Hi, I'm Stargate Pioneer.
And I'm Steven Jondrew, and we're from Better Podcasting, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of the individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in 3,
2,
1.
Before we get this thing rolling, I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing it, but a couple quick announcements. First off is that we will be hosting another Indie Game Days in Terre Haute on October 20th from 1 to 5.
What? This is the first I've heard about it.
I know, right? So hope to see you guys there if you're in the Terre Haute area and you want to come out and play some games with us. And yeah, should be awesome and a good time.
It's definitely worth a commute. 6-hour plane flight.
From wherever you're coming from. It's, yeah.
McCarry said a plane flight, like somebody out there might have taken a helicopter. I mean.
Or a spaceship.
I'm talking to you, Elon. we know you're listening.
Yeah, he's going to come and land his rocket right next to the gaming store without setting it on fire or blowing it up or exploding it or something.
Because he's a wizard.
He is. That is true. He's Tony Stark. He probably has. If I was Elon Musk,
a technomancer,
I would make power armor. I really would. I'd be like, you know what? I might as well be Iron Man in real, or Tony Stark in real life. It's time for me to just be Iron Man. That would be awesome.
Pulsar technology.
Right on. Well, as you guys have probably heard, this is going to be our 100th episode, which is pretty awesome. So it's a big deal for us. A lot of recording and a lot of time and everything. This is actually around 150 if you include our actual plays and reviews. But just want to say thank you to everybody out there who has supported us and listened to us and all that kind of stuff. In whichever way you do that, whether it's through reviews or being awesome like Todd and being a Patreon supporter, or following us on Twitter or Facebook or any other places that we're out there. Just big thank you to everybody that's out there that supports us and listens to us and shares us with everybody else. Really, really appreciate it. And this has been an awesome experience for us. Kind of sounds like we're going to shut things down with the way I say that, but that is not happening. We're going to keep on going.
This is our eulogy.
Lots of more fun things to come. No, it's not.
I'm wearing a black dress.
Almost. Alrighty, so unfortunately, we are terribly disorganized with how we do things sometimes, and
What?
we oftentimes just sort of improvise our episodes and sort of put together what we're going to do. So we threw around a couple ideas of what we should do for our 100th episode and really just couldn't settle on anything. And I thought, why don't we just do like listener questions and like a lightning round full of questions kind of a thing? And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to solicit those questions on an episode because that's how most of you guys encounter us. But we did ask on Twitter, Facebook, and all of the places that we are out there to able to share things with people in social media. And we got a decent response. So we do plan to do this again. So maybe we'll put a little more forethought and
It's doubtful.
get things out to you guys a little sooner so we can get a little more... get input from everybody else that's out there that isn't on social media or whatever. So I guess without any further ado, I will just jump right into this. So the first one is from listener Kevin. Wants to know, sometimes I hear the sound of ice. I'm going to add this sound in here, glingling in the cups in the background.
It's not a glingle.
What is it then? Chinking?
Like a tinkling
sound.
sound.
Tinkling sound.
sounds bad, but it's definitely not a glingle.
So there is a sound of ice
like
and cups in the background.
Sound. This is like a tinny kind of.
So do you guys enjoy some kind of drinks or cocktails during the recording? So the answer to that is...
Only every time.
The answer to that is yes, almost every time. I think there's been a few that we didn't.
Well, I am a very diverse person, so I don't have a single cocktail of choice. Currently, I'm drinking a White Russian, but I would say probably what shows up most is wine of any variety, but always red. And usually of the Winking Owl brand from Aldi's because it's cheap. And then let's see, that or a White Russian or some variation of a Moscow Mule.
Right on. So my general cocktail of choice is 3 or 4 ice cubes in a cup and then a couple, what do they call it, fingers of Jaeger. However, you stack it up in a cup. And that's generally what I drink. Sometimes I'll have
You have really big fingers.
This is true, but or sometimes I'll have a beer or whatever when we record. So oftentimes during the actual plays when we're playing them with the Night
beer.
Witches.
Like Bud Light?
No. So usually I like Sam Adams. I enjoy generally darker beers or darker wheat beers. Yeah.
Oh, we did just make a giant batch of apple pie. So
yeah.
that'll probably be...
Yeah, that will happen during HillCon. That's a tradition we have for HillCon.
Mm-hmm.
So apple pie is awesome.
For you guys probably don't know, but Kurt also periodically makes wines and cordials and champagnes. So
And ciders and all kinds of stuff, yeah.
we sample those for him
Yes.
because we're good friends.
But they're
He does a good job.
yeah, I say I
I
haven't.
really like the cordial, the blackberry cordial. I think was my favorite. Or was it blackberry?
Yeah, I
Some
think
kind
so.
of berry.
Blackberries are easy to sell. So, all right. Well, moving right along. So that's generally, yes, we are usually imbibing some sort of cocktail as we are recording, doing something just because we do this oftentimes after we come home from work or whatever and sort of trying to relax from crappy days. So
It's hard to switch gears sometimes from stress and seriousness to
Right.
let's talk about playing games.
Right. So I guess right along with stress and seriousness, I'm not sure. This got submitted on Facebook by Mike the Wine Guy. So he asked how our stoplight works. And I know we've mentioned it several times throughout several episodes, but I don't really know that we have one specific place to point to where we really kind of lay it out specifically. So from now on, this will be the thing that we will point to basically, right? Because we've kind of mentioned it in passing here and there. So everyone is pretty familiar with the X card. So the X card is something that is a tool that's used at almost every con game that I've ever been at now, but it is generally an index card that sits in the middle of the table with a big black X on it. And if at some point in the game there is something that makes you feel uncomfortable or pushes the wrong buttons for you, you can touch the X card and there's no questions asked, and the scene ends there, and we move on from that, and it stops there. And if people need to take a break or whatever from it because it's of intense experiences or whatever emotions, then it's all good and it's no questions asked, and that's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a really great tool in and of itself. It really is a good thing to have at the table, but one of the things that I don't like about it is that it's only an on-off switch. It only has one button to push.
Well, it's kind of the first iteration of this kind of thing at a gaming table. So if you look now, there are a number of different kinds of, I guess, like safety tools for RPG games. And while we don't use it at our home table regularly, we use it for con games we run at the local game store. We kind of know people a lot less than we do.
And our table,
so.
My advice, generally speaking, is if you have new people that come to your home table, then maybe it would be worth breaking it out because you don't know them. But the people that you have around your table, generally speaking, we know each other very well, and so we don't use it at our home table. But there are situations where I could understand where it would be necessary if you haven't known each other for years and years and years or whatever, or you don't know what each other's hot button issues are or whatever, right? But the way ours works is that's a stoplight, so red, yellow, green. And ours, I posted it on Facebook, and I'll probably put it up on our webpage as well, so that's always there. That way anybody can find it. But it is a stoplight, and on the red of the stoplight, it has a big black X. And that functions the exact same way as the X card, which I think is one of the key points to mention, because sometimes when we've mentioned this, it doesn't seem like that gets conveyed quite as clearly. Red means stop, but it's the exact same thing as the X card. So no questions asked, hard stop, and we move away from whatever it is, right? But one of the things that I mentioned before that I don't like about the X card is that it doesn't have a tool that is like, I like what is happening, and this is an emotionally intense moment, right? And that's what the green light is for, is that we're having an experience, like we're role-playing a scene, right? And sometimes it gets a little emotional, or maybe your two characters are arguing or whatever, and you don't know how to signal with people that you're not familiar with maybe at a convention game that I like what's happening. It doesn't necessarily mean escalate things, but it means I'm okay with where we're at right now.
Like I'm acting angry and upset because that's the role-playing expectation right now. But as a person that is playing this game, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I'm having fun. Exactly. So it doesn't necessarily, green doesn't necessarily mean escalate things. It means I'm okay with what's happening right now, and I'm enjoying myself and having a good time. And it works really well for, I think, those emotionally intense scenes where it's kind of hard to tell if someone is just role playing really well, or maybe they're starting to get upset with things, right? And I think that sometimes it's okay to touch the green, and if you're interacting with someone, to be like, kind of gesturing, is this okay? Are you okay with this? And then responding. And it's a way that you don't have to get taken out of the role play of the moment because it's done sort of non-verbally, right?
I think this would be, honestly, we've never used it in this capacity because since these tools have come along, we haven't been in these situations. But I think it would be fantastic for a LARP because there's so much more role playing and emotion involved in that. I think it would be a really great tool if you could find a way to easily incorporate it in.
Well, I think if you actually, what I think I would do is if I was to organize a LARP again, I would incorporate it onto the back of the character sheet. So like ours, I like to have them fold up in a certain way that they fit into a pocket nicely and they're very user friendly, and then incorporate that stoplight on there so that you would always have it with you and you could be green or red or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And then the final component of it is yellow, and yellow is we're getting to where I'm starting to feel it's not a hard stop yet, but we need to sort of back up a little bit and de-escalate.
Shift gears.
Yes, exactly. And that's the most useful part of the tool, I think, because sometimes with the X card, my fear is always that people are not going to use it because they sort of have this stigma like, oh, I don't want to break the moment up or whatever. And I think that the yellow piece of that sort of alleviates that, right? So it's like in horror when you don't want to cross the line, but you want to go right up to it. And sometimes it's hard to know where that is for people. So that's what that yellow is for, so that it's like, hey, we need to sort of take a step back a little bit and back things down. And maybe it's a fade to black moment, and not, however that needs to be. But I think it's just a much more useful tool. So instead of having one button, now you have three. And in a way, you also have a couple extra ones because you can kind of ask questions with it, like green, yes. Are you okay with this? Okay, yeah. So there's, it can be used in a much more communicative way. I don't know how you want to say that or whatever, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if I agree with it as like asking for consent because your corner is sort of like implying what you hope the answer is going to be with
That's
that.
True. That's true.
I don't really like that.
Because you're kind of pressuring people in a way then. I can understand that. I could see.
I mean, I appreciate the idea of asking for consent without having to be like, are you okay with this? And stopping the whole,
right, yeah.
I like where your head's at, but I don't know.
I think in application it could be awkward and people could, I understand what you're saying. I see that. All right. So from now on, when we have to point at the stoplight explanation, now we can point right to this episode 100 because it is awesome. Right on. So I think we just want to go back and forth on some of these here as we go down the list.
Yeah. Let's do it. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. I did that one, so now.
All right. Well, Kaylin kind of sent us a bundle of questions here, so I'm just going to pick one of his and then we can just like jump around and come back, I guess. What is your favorite system to date? Ooh, should I not have picked that one? You don't have I have an answer for mine.
Go ahead.
Right off the bat. My favorite system to date is still Dread. I think like it's easy, very intuitive. The learning curve is like
very
nil.
Low, yeah.
And I love the character surveys.
Yeah.
Like, beyond just the actual mechanic, but like the character creation method, I think is fantastic.
And it's sort of made me think about character creation for other games in different ways too. So whether that's obviously horror stuff like Trail of Cthulhu and those kind of things, it's made me think of those horror surveys, putting scenarios together where these are things I'm going to ask you to sort of draw you into this plot right away. And it does a very good job of sort of laying that out.
And some of them are so subtle too. Like you don't see how this is going to really impact your... That's why one of my favorite ones is always like, what is in your pockets? Mm-hmm. And so then later in the game, when you point to, I have this thing.
The One Ring is in my pocket.
Yeah, well, maybe. But you better be prepared to deal with the consequences of that.
Oh, Sauron just saw you in that case. No.
So I have a one-shot that I've run a couple of times now, and one of the characters has an affliction. So in the last game, I asked the character the player that was playing that character if he had his medicine. And I didn't even have to say anything. He's like, oh, well, I didn't write that down and stuff that I have in my pocket, so I guess I don't have it. I was like, makes sense to me.
Oopsie daisy. Right on. Well, I think my favorite system to date, like right now at this moment, I think has to be V5. I have a lot of other games that I really like, but in terms of right at this very moment, the one that I am the most happy with has to be V5 with the way the hunger mechanic works and the touchstones and convictions and all that stuff. I really, really just like World of Darkness again, and specifically Vampire. They've put the darkness back into it, and Hunger might be the most amazing thing ever that I've seen in a game design or whatever. It's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, I think V5.
Well, I think that kind of
I would have a gazillion honorable mentions, but
leads us nicely into the question we have from Liam, which is, what is your favorite vampire clan and why? Do you want to go first on that?
Okay, I'm going to break this apart into two different pieces. I think...
No, you have to pick one.
Really?
Pick your favorite child right now.
One, huh?
Just one. That's all you get.
Okay, so I'm going to make a lot of people probably mad, and I'm going to pick something that isn't in the new Vampire yet, and we'll see what happens with it. But I have always loved Ravnos. I like the idea of the vagabond-style character that, wanders from place to place. I like the idea... Now, a lot of Ravnos are sort of portrayed in the way that they're just disruptive, and that's not fun and doesn't add to the game in a meaningful way. But I've always liked the idea of the character that sort of plays the role of Loki, where Loki always causes trouble, but there's always a reason for it, and it always sort of comes full circle. And in fact, Loki was doing what he was doing for a reason, and that's sort of the way the Path of Paradox works, in that you're trying to find your path and walk it, and how you fit into the cosmos of everything. And I like the idea of being able to bend reality a little bit. And then I like the idea of being able to play with people's perceptions, especially in a world where supernatural is real, and you can sort of blur the lines of what is possible and what is plausible, and when you can create illusions and stuff. And I know everybody that's familiar with Vampire out there has 100 horror stories of terrible experiences with Ravnos, where because of the way the rules work, they were able to manipulate things and work things to do crazy broken things, and I don't disagree with that at all. But strictly from a role-playing and story point of it, I just think that they are one of the most interesting pieces that doesn't exactly fit in, but still adds something to it, because they don't fit in the spot, they don't really fit in the camp, they are truly independent, and it just doesn't work. And then I've always liked the idea, like Ravnos truly is the Loki of the vampire world. It's like, he's dead, oh nope, never mind, he's the trickster, oh dead again, nope, dang it, not dead, still not dead. It's an awesome part of it, and I like when they finally killed him off during the Week of Nightmares. Like, no, Loki is like an asterisk subtext. No, he's really dead now. We really did kill him. This is actually him dying, right? And there was always this debate. No, I really don't think they did. I think he's still coming back, right? And I don't know. I've always enjoyed the clan. I think it's a lot of fun. So go ahead,
Samisi.
Yeah.
I debated. There's a lot of really cool small clans, but Samisi just make the best bad guys.
Yeah, they do.
They're so good at just being evil.
Mm-hmm.
And
they are purpose built.
well, there's just, something so wrong about being able to completely change the appearance of not just yourself, but someone else.
Right.
And then even beyond that, the very shape and structure that makes up a person. Plus, they can quite literally morph into nightmare creatures, which is amazing too. And then you get into like the Koldun sorcery, and that's like mind blown. Like, whatever, Tremere, hold my beer and watch this. Like, that's next level stuff.
Well, I've always liked the idea that they can change what you look like and who you are is such a part of your identity, right? Mm-hmm. And they can just wreck that. And I think it's such an interesting way to be a bad guy, because it's about, helplessness and all this stuff, because they make great villains, but they can truly take your entire identity away because they can. And
like Nosferatu is kind of like that too, but they're sort of like using their powers to blend in. Mm-hmm. Samisi are unconcerned with that. Right. They're like, I'm going to look like who I really am, whatever that may be. It may not even look human to you. Doesn't matter.
I just like the idea of them embracing, I am in fact a monster, and I am turning monster up to 11. Right? That's just sort of what they do. That's their jam, Yeah.
And they're not even on the humanity road anymore.
Generally speaking,
they're on the road of metamorphosis. Mm-hmm. I am changing into something else.
Well, and then in terms of paths of morality,
Samisi butterfly.
In terms of paths of morality, the road of metamorphosis is really probably one of the most starkly different from everything else, because it is so inhuman. In fact, in the Dark Ages, that's actually their aura exudes anti-humanity, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're in terms of what my favorite characters are for running a vampire game, Tzimisce is probably easy my number one. And then after that would probably be Malkavian because it's so fun to foreshadow with a person who's crazy and can see things that you can't. Right? That's just a fun trope to play with. So, all right. So next is a question from Patreon supporter Todd. Everyone should be awesome like Todd. What is your desert island RPG?
All right. So first I was like, this is a really hard question. But then I was, okay, I have some really important things I need to know. Do I get other people to play the RPG?
Well, yeah, I
with
think
me?
that's important.
Does it have to be a single player thing? Do I get dice? Should I pick a diceless RPG? Basically, I put way too much thought into this question.
No, I did too, because maybe I overthought it a little bit too. But
like if I pick Dread, do I get a Jenga tower?
well, I think you have to get what it takes to play the game.
Okay.
That has to be a given, right?
You know.
All right.
So in that case, I decided that I would pick Shadows of Estern.
Oh, wow. I did not expect that at all.
Here's my reasoning.
Okay.
If I am trapped on a desert island, this involves a whole series of books. The writing is phenomenal. The art is very pretty. It is in no way reminiscent of anything to do with sands or islands. So it's very much escapist for the setting. Basically, yeah, there's a lot of material there, and it's good to read, even if you're not playing the game. And if I had all the time in the world and nothing else to do, I'd be able to read all those books, I feel like, and run a really good game.
Wow. You have perhaps made me rethink my choice. Well,
I had to consider scope. I mean,
well, so I did as well. So I thought if I'm on a desert island, stranded, starving, and feeling terrible, I don't want to play a dark game. I don't want to play a horror game, right? That's going to be terrible. I thought, what is the opposite of horror and dark? Well, that's 7th Sea. But then I thought, we're on a stranded island. I don't want to be playing 7th Sea on a desert island. So that sort of nixes that one. But I thought, well, Fate really is an easy game, right? And at a certain point, you have to run out of character sheets, right? So Fate Accelerated is very simple with just aspects and whatever, right? You can sort of play that indefinitely without having any real character sheets. There's only a couple aspects to remember and whatnot. I thought that might be an easy way to go. But then you said that you could have, if we have all the books there, then maybe that changes things a little bit. I don't know.
Well, Shadows of Estern is kind of, the books aren't, this is an adventure. It's this is the setting. This
is the world,
this
the setting,
is the, you know. So I feel like you have to get all of the books in order.
Right on.
Because I don't think I would give you like Fate Core, but then also give you Fate of Freeport and also,
right.
You know, that's kind of cheating.
It's never ending. I'll take GURPS. It has all of the books.
You can't pick Dungeons and Dragons and get everything for every system. I've got 1st edition through 5th edition,
right?
All the adventures.
Basically, we're just going to be able to sit here and play forever. It's not a matter of boredom. We have every adventure made.
This is basically just a vacation on a desert island.
This is a gaming vacay. Oh man, I think I might still go with Fate though, because in terms of trying to make up a game or whatever. You know, once you get tired of Shadows of Estern because you've been sitting there forever, right? You can very easily adapt that into anything you wanted to do. Powered by the Apocalypse is fun, but they're very, very focused. And I think that would, on a desert island, that would get old. Like, well, we could play Mad Max again. No, I don't really want to play Mad Max again. I'm cool. Whatever version of. So I think I'm going to stick with Fate. It's not my favorite game, but I think given the situation, lack of character sheets, because they're going to run out eventually, right?
You just said you got everything you needed for the RPG,
right?
Though.
But
so, like,
eventually the character sheet's going to run out. Eventually,
like you get some leaves or some tree bark.
Palm branches.
I'm very upset at your lack of dedication.
Write it in the sand until the tide comes in. The game ends when the tide comes in, guys.
Now you've made a new game mechanic. Yeah. That's your shot clock for Powered by the Apocalypse.
The tide.
I thought for a minute about Hot Springs Island, just because I thought that would be funny.
Terrible irony. No.
I'm like, well, maybe we can turn it into a LARP.
Then you can go full on crazy. The adventurers are coming to save us. I know. The other one I thought about was like Itris B or something like really trippy when you...
All right, guys, we're going to find the island mushroom.
Right, exactly. Like really crazy out there, surreal kind of stuff that could be fun to do as well. I don't know. It's so hard to pick. But I think for utility, I would still stick with Fate, I think. Just strictly based on utility.
Okay.
Kind of a cop-out, but it would be either that or something completely wacky, like Itris B.
I feel like in honor of Todd, you should have picked the Dracula dossier.
Oh, holy shit, that game could go on forever. Oh, no, that's it. That totally is it. It is totally the Dracula dossier. Well played, Todd. Well played. No, but it totally is, because that game is never ending, and you have an entire novel to pull clues out of. And oh man, that really is the never ending game. Like, you could run that over and over and over. So all you need is the dossier, the handbook, and then Trail of Cthulhu book.
They spent 6 months just studying.
Oh my God, yeah, I know, right? Being mind blown, making your own notes in that Dracula dossier book. That's just so crazy. Yeah, it actually is. How did I not see that? Holy cow. Dang. There's almost like analysis paralysis. There's too much to choose from. So yeah, it's got to be Trail of Cthulhu, and specifically the Dracula dossier. Definitely. Because I guess like in most of those, like, you sort of kind of win in a way. So it's sort of uplifting, right? Beating the darkness back a little bit, but not really. Right on. So, all right. So next up is Michelle asks, listener Michelle asks, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned from the podcast?
Okay, this is going to sound stupid, but just the reach that something like this has. Like,
oh, yeah.
I know how small the world is, and I know whatever, if you put it on the social media
the
network.
Internets and all that.
You know, and somebody, whatever, will see it. But I'm still firmly entrenched in the belief that I'm pretty small and insignificant on the scale of the world.
Right.
So the idea that there's somebody listening to our podcast in Australia or Germany or China, I'm just, nuh-uh. That's not a thing.
Right.
But it is.
Right. It is pretty surprising. It's been pretty
Even
crazy.
somebody in rural Indiana with a recording setup can change the world.
I think my most surprising thing is that I've been gaming a long time, and I felt like I had thought about a lot of things involving gaming and how to do things right and more efficiently, and stories and all that kind of stuff. But doing this for the past 2 years has really made me reevaluate how I tell stories, and like every aspect of it, not just how I put my games together, but when we sit down and how I talk and the pacing of how I speak and all of it, like as a full, complete experience. It's really made me take a look at everything. And I feel like if you asked me when we started this, in 2 years, do you think that your gaming will have improved significantly? I probably would have said, I don't really think so. I'm pretty confident and comfortable with where my gaming is. But in talking about all the things that we've talked about and interacting with different people, at Gen Con or at Hoosier Con or wherever it is, I really think that I've learned a lot about having more fun at gaming and sort of putting the fun back into it. Do you know what I mean?
I guess, I was having fun before. It surprises me that you didn't think that you were going to get any better doing this.
Well, not that I wasn't going to get any better, but not...
No, but like when we started this, I hadn't, like, I GM'd a little bit, but not a lot.
Right.
And I was like, oh man, I'm going to learn a ton, because everybody's like, okay, just go, just run a game and it'll be fine and just do the thing. But then we're like, okay, well, I'm going to force you and Kurt to sit down and tell me how you actually do things. That's basically what the first few episodes are. Me sitting there asking questions. Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, right. But what about this? Tell me what's going on in that brain of yours when you're doing this thing.
Right.
So yeah, I approached it with an anticipation of seizing all the knowledges.
Well, I was just surprised that there's, like you said, there's always room to improve and grow in things. But I guess it just made me take a much more critical eye of what I was doing.
Well, you guys were really surprised. I can't remember which episode it was. But it was back fairly, early on, at how different you guys' processes were.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
For creating a game. And it didn't surprise me at all, because I've played in both of you guys' games. And it's very clear that you're doing things differently, but I wasn't sure exactly what you were doing.
Right.
And so then, like, hearing you guys talk about it, and then, yeah, you guys are just both like, oh, wow, that's, not what I do at all.
Right. Well, I think it's fun, too. I really enjoy gaming, and I like the talking about games and stuff. And I think that setting aside a special time to where we just sit down and do this, it made me realize how much I just really enjoy games at a sort of out of sight of storylines and all that stuff. I really just like games, and I like talking about them, and I like telling stories. I've been a storyteller my whole life, and I know all of our circle of friends are probably tired of hearing, the same story or whatever, but
I feel like it's increased the amount of emphasis we put on feedback too after games. Like, we've done We did Roses and Thorns, but not
as constructively.
not necessarily like every single game. And yeah, I think it's increased the amount of
Well, I also think
of
we're
feedback we
much
want.
more likely to get honest feedback about negative things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so this is another one of the questions from Caitlin. What is your favorite storyline that you have played?
So I think that I am going to go with the Requiem LARP that we played in. And it may not be a fair comparison because it is a LARP and things work differently there. But there was a Requiem vampire game happening in Danville where we lived, and there was some problems with the way the city structure was working, and we weren't in the game, and we had been longtime LARPers, but we, because of kids and life and whatever, had sort of moved away from that. And then a friend of ours who was running the game said, hey, I need some help. You guys had talked about coming and being involved again. What if you guys made your characters together and came in with a purpose to do this? So we kind of laid out what we were going to do, and we made 3 Lancia Sanctum vampires of different clans. And the Lancia Sanctum believe that vampires exist because they were cursed by God, and they are there to drive mortals back to God through fear, essentially, is what the long and short of it is. There's a lot more to it, but
Seems reasonable.
that's the long and short of it, right? I really like the idea of gods avenging angels in a sort of anti-hero badness kind of a way, right? It's just fun. It's an interesting topic. So we made 3 religious zealots who were completely hopelessly loyal to each other and willing to die for our cause. And
so zealots then.
yeah. and we each had our niche, and we were hopelessly loyal to one another, which is an interesting thing to explore in Vampire as well, because it's always about the betrayal, about the betrayal. And it eventually did happen. There was some betrayal that did happen, but it took a long time. And we brought a certain amount of law to the city, which is what we were there to do and help support the prince. But being vampires, we were conniving, scheming, evil creatures, and things happened to line themselves up, and we were able to seize power. And my character, who was Black Peter, became Archbishop, or not, I believe I did call myself Cardinal eventually, of Danville. And I fashioned myself into the worst villain that you could imagine, and just kept putting more and more oppressive rules on everyone. And I outlawed an entire political sect of the Circle of the Crone. And I kept doing things to try and push people to try and overthrow us, because our character's sort of story arc had run its course, and it was time for us to sort of move on. And I thought, well, no one's pushing us out because they're kind of scared of us, so I need to galvanize these people together through more fear. And just couldn't believe how far we closed the iron grip around them, and then everybody just was sort of terrified, because I guess in a way they knew that we were willing to die for our cause, but I just totally thought that they would come with numbers and they would overwhelm us, and that's what it would be. And it was awesome fun to be the bad guy, and everybody was okay with it. It was a lot of fun. Everybody knew that we were sort of, good-hearted about it, and, made sure that it was still a cool and interesting storyline. But it was fun to be a real villain for a while and do things that way, because I was just terrible fun to be a horrible dictator, in a vampire world.
It is. For a little while.
Well, then yeah.
And then you get bored.
Well, I thought they would galvanize and kill us, and then it never came.
And then you're just like, I'm tired of this. Well, let me push a little farther. Right. Are we there yet? How about now, guys? No, still not. And what about this? Yeah. But
it was a great moment. I don't know, not a whole lot of detail in there, I guess, but we had a lot of great moments, and we staged some scenes, which were really cool, because it's something that we could do with LARP, because we've had some haunted house experience.
Bluff. That was probably my favorite thing of all, because there is nothing like a good bluff in LARP. Because if you're being completely honest, it's a lot like the vampire world is designed to be, in that you don't always know what other people are capable of, and you're very sure of what your disciplines do and how they look. But when it comes to a clan that you don't encounter very often, you have no idea. You may have a vague idea of what's involved. So we had these chainsaws that we just drew a bunch of symbols on in blood, and they didn't even do anything. But they looked like they would do something. So it was a complete bluff.
There was a Carthian leader who was causing a lot of problems, and was sort of a real physical problem to deal with. But he, generally speaking, was really good at dealing with one person. We thought, well, if we come with all 3 of us and
Well, and it was great because I had a character that was not physically powerful at all.
Right.
In fact, if I recall, I had somebody else start the chainsaw for me before we got there.
Right.
And I was just standing, like, I literally had enough strength to hold it and not even wield it. And the ST let me know that going into it. And I was like, that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hold it. I'm not even going to do anything with it.
Well, there are a lot of great moments of bluffing and just seeing how far we could push things.
Yeah.
And see if someone would call the bluff, and then have to sort of work out the problem and the fallout that would come from that. But we really never, no one ever called our chips in.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot more bluffing in general involved in LARP.
yeah,
That is unfortunately absent a lot at the tabletop because you get so much more focused on stats sometimes, and, which is really sad.
well, there's a lot less
because-
interaction sometimes, like at a personal level, you know, when you're talking to another character and interacting. And
Well, and just at, personal victory wise in a game, it doesn't get much better than just successfully pulling off some bullshit.
this is true.
So my favorite storyline is the Dark Ages game that you ran, and it was just me and Fergus. And I don't even want to call it the Dark Ages vampire game because it was really just like Dark Ages World of Darkness, because we spent pretty much the entire game as mortals. And it was like, oh my God, there's werewolves. Oh my God, there's vampires. I think we're going to end up being vampires. Oh wait, Inquisition. Are we going to be Inquisitors? Oh, hey, there's a mage. What is even happening right now? I don't know, but we got to find this cup before the world ends.
Yeah.
It was like the quest for the Holy Grail. And it was awesome.
That was a great game. I had a lot of fun running that. It was fun to... We run a lot of games with World of Darkness where sometimes you'll start off as mortals and then it segues into becoming a vampire game or a werewolf game or whatever. I really enjoy playing on players' expectations sometimes and playing against them, right? So I knew going into that game that you guys had the expectation that you would eventually become some sort of supernatural creature and what that would be. And then sort of sprinkling in a little bit of some werewolf and a little bit of some vampire here and there. And you guys were completely outmatched in the encounters, but were smart and didn't go full confrontation and sort of backed away and did what you could to sort of avoid a major entanglement. And I think that element of risk added to the game, and there was some sort of unholy artifact cup that chalice you guys had that got incorporated into a later game, in a more modern game, the Antonius Vault, I think is what I called it. It was a lot of fun. I should do something with that again. I'm going to write that down. Antonius Vault. That was a great storyline and a great item.
And also, I just love Fergus. If you're listening, I miss you, buddy.
So one that I just realized I forgot about in a tabletop sense, when Vampire the Requiem first came out, and this sort of relates back to the other game, no one had any experience with it yet, but we had lots of experience with Vampire. So I ran a game where everybody started off as mortals, and in order to sort of introduce everyone to the world, I just had them create people who had just gotten embraced and were introduced to the covenants. And they were introduced to the Lancia Sanctum, and were in the process of becoming sanctified and members of that covenant and whatever. And as we ran the game, my favorite part of it is that you guys were so twisted up and didn't know who was right and who was telling the truth that I believe at a certain point you guys had 3 pieces of paper. One was things we know.
Well, but see, that doesn't count because this is what's the favorite storyline you've played.
Oh, okay.
And you didn't play that game,
That's
my
true.
friend.
That's true. But I guess the long and short of it is playing against the player's expectations, because there was 3 categories, like facts, things we think are true, and then...
First of all, it was facts, lesser facts, which were like things we knew to be true but weren't sure were actually relevant or useful in any fashion. It'd be like, oh, that guy we first met that day, he was wearing blue jeans, and he seems to wear blue jeans every single day. That's probably not important, but I know it to be true. And then the other one was like, yeah, the things we think are true. Yeah.
It was just a lot of fun to run and watch you guys sort of try and puzzle out who was telling the truth and being honest with you guys. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that game because there were some sessions where I didn't do anything. I sat down and watched you guys sort of try and who should we trust? What should we do? Next up is Chris asks, what equipment do you guys actually record and edit with?
I don't know. There's microphones. I think this thing is called a Zoom. Something with a Z.
So when we first started out, we used this is a PV
It has buttons.
Yeah, it's a PV soundboard, multi-channel, or I'm sorry, it records all into one channel, but you can plug, I believe, 8 different channels into it, and it goes into a USB. And this used to be plugged directly into my laptop, and then we recorded through this straight into my laptop. And we still use the same mics that we started with, and these are Behringer. They are Behringer XM
1800S.
So I got these off of Amazon, and they have been the same mics that we've recorded with the entire time, and they are XLR mics that go into a Zoom H6, and that is what we upgraded to and got rid of the PV soundboard, and it's much more portable and easy for us to take around. So when we've recorded at Gen Con and those different places, it's been great and super portable and easy to use.
Well, the other thing that's cool about it is it records every person on a separate channel instead of all into one audio feed. So when you're going out and taking out verbal tics, or if there's something important that gets said in an interview, somebody happens to be like talking over the top of it, you can separate those things out enough that they make sense without actually changing or losing any of the content.
Right. And then each individual microphone.
I don't do any of that, but I
right.
I made that sound really good, didn't
right.
I?
It did totally sound like you did it, really. And then when you're running filters through it, if you're recording each individual mic on a separate track, it makes the sound a whole lot cleaner. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on stuff. Our microphones, I think that they are about $20 a piece, and then the Zoom was a little bit expensive, but that was after we had been up and running for a while, and I thought this is a surefire thing, and we're going to keep doing it. So then I wanted to upgrade some equipment. As far as editing stuff goes, I'm a big fan of open source stuff, so I edit with Audacity. It's a free open source audio editing software, and then I use another thing called Levelator that kind of puts the sound together to where everyone's audio levels are evened out. So you can take care of a lot of that on the front end if you by manipulating the dials and stuff like that. But it will do a lot of do you a lot of favors before you sort of figure all that kind of stuff out. So
and then as far as podcast servers go.
So we use Libsyn as our audio hosting service, and then Bluehost is who we host our website through. If any of you guys out there are looking to start up a podcast and need some advice as what to do, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I sort of everything I've done has been self-taught and sort of learned by making mistakes. And if you listen to some of our earlier recordings, you can probably very clearly tell that the audio is better now, hopefully, than it was then. And I've also learned to edit better and that kind of stuff as well. So it's not a huge thing to overcome. It's super easy to do, and the barrier to entry is actually pretty low because you can start with just your phone. You actually have pretty decent microphones in your phone, and that kind of stuff.
Actually, on the Gonna Geek Network, right, there's a podcast about podcasting.
Oh, yes. Yes, there is. Better Podcasting is actually what it's called.
Yeah.
You can find them on the Gonna Geek Network, which we are also part of. Right
but they're pretty good. So.
Yeah. And if you have more specific questions about equipment and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, no, but they are they really are very technical about things and really know the difference. I'm sort of a caveman when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I know it works, and I've had guitars and instruments and stuff, so I sort of have a very basic understanding of audio quality and that kind of stuff. So
okay. So what is your fallback RPG and or board game? Sorry, that was the last question from Kalen. He had 4. So.
Right on.
Or 3.
So my fallback RPG is LOTFP, Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It's easy. It's a crowd pleaser. I've got lots of D&D experience. It busts out all the polyhedrals. It hits all the right buttons for me for something that's easy to just sort of get out and play on a whim. The books are put together really well if you want to run any of their adventures out of the book. It's just very user-friendly. Simple enough to be like D&D-esque without all the extra, sometimes unnecessary buttons and whistles that you have with a 3rd edition or a 4th edition or a Pathfinder, and even some of the 5th edition stuff too. So,
my fallback RPG is Fate, because I can do whatever I want with it. Doesn't matter what kind of story idea I have in my brain. If I'm like, nobody's got anything planned, okay, Fate, I know the system, odds are good. I won't even have to open this book, and I can just tell you the story that I wanted to tell you. And there you go, done, easy peasy.
Right on. So board games, as far if we're playing with multiple people, mine is Riff Raff. It is a awesome game where there's a ship that's sort of on this cone and it lists back and forth, and you have to place your pieces sort of like in a reverse Jenga way back on the ship without them falling over, because the boat tips and lists back and forth every way, and it has the masts and the yard arms that kind of spin around. It's an awesome game. It's Riff Raff. It's RIFF, and I think it's available here in the U.S. I think I ordered it. We had a friend of ours that worked for a board game company and collected board games, and we played it at a Halloween party, and I thought, I have to have this game. So I ordered it from Germany, and it's an amazing, awesome, fun party game. So
I feel like the question is kind of loaded because for me, it depends. If you want a game for a larger group of people, but they're not board game people, then my go-to every time is Codenames. Because it's easy to explain, it's easy to play. Again, low barrier of entry. Right. But if there are people that have a little bit of board game experience, then I like Pandemic because you can't win a lot of times.
Right.
I don't know.
Right on.
It's like Risk if Risk was a good game that was interesting.
So did you have a 2-player one for when we just sit down and it's just me and you?
I like Einstein.
Mm-hmm. I thought you would pick that.
I mean, you can play it with 4, but...
It's a solid game with 2 people.
Yeah, it's a solid game with 2 people. And I just like it.
Right. So I was torn for just the 2 of us between Edison versus Tesla, but I ultimately ended up going, so just slid an honorable mention in there. But my actual favorite is The Crow. It's an upper deck game,
that one.
And I love that game so much. It's got so much replayability. I love the movie. It has the feel of the movie in the board game. So much fun. I love it. It's a game designed for 2 players, so it's a great 2-player game.
And it's an intellectual property board game that stands up as a game
on its own. Yeah. Oh yeah, great game. Love that game. Awesome. Plus, it's The Crow.
Yeah.
Did I mention it's The Crow? I think I did. Right on. All right. So, listener Cody asks, I really want to get started with LOTFP. I'm not really sure where to start. There's a lot of stuff out there. So, where should I start? And what are your favorite settings or adventures for LOTFP?
All of them. As far as where to start, I would recommend starting with Maze of the Blue Medusa.
Oh, really?
Which is not an actual, it uses the LOTFP system, but it's not published by LOTFP. It's published by Satyr Press, I think it is, or Sartor.
But LOTFP, Lamentations bought the rights to it, so they will be republishing it, though, from what I understand.
It was republished by Satyr Press, the second edition as well.
But now, I believe that Raji bought the rights to it, and he will be publishing it.
Oh.
They're going to do another print run of it. I could be wrong. I could be entirely wrong about that, but I believe that's what I had read somewhere.
So here's my reasoning. I'm figuring if you want to get into Lamentations of the Princess, of the Flame Princess.
Close enough.
A lot of times those people are coming from an OSR or Dungeons and Dragons background. And this is essentially a dungeon crawl.
It's like a mega dungeon.
So yeah, it's a mega dungeon. So you're familiar with the turf, broadly speaking. It's got the system there for you, so you know what you're doing, but it's going to show you all of the things that make LOTFP different and awesome. If you wanted to point at something like, okay, weird fantasy role-playing, but in an area that's outside of my comfort zone yet.
Right.
I feel like this is a good, is a good gateway for it. It's got interesting, well-developed NPCs, just cool, weird creatures, and yeah. Plus, it's well laid out. It's a very good book. It will last you a significant amount of time. So, return on investment wise.
Right.
Of course, the art is beautiful because Zach is an artist. So there you go.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And a good one, I guess, apparently.
I'm going to go a different direction with where to start. So I'm going to pick Frostbitten and Mutilated. So once you have the core book, right, obviously, Frostbitten and Mutilated is where I would start because it sort of has a lot of different pieces in it. So you have the sort of landscape adventure that you can go wandering around Hexcrawl style to see what you can find, right? But also inside there, it has a couple different dungeon-esque sort of places to go explore and some ruins and things to go look at. So for one book that will get you the feel of the LOTFP stuff, right? And has a little bit of all of the different things that you want to experience, the hex crawl, the dungeons, the ruins, and these supernatural weird places to go find. All of that is contained in that one book. And it's got some great art because it's, like you mentioned, same as Maze of Blue Medusa. Zach does the artwork for it, and it's a great book. It's well put together, and it also has the addition of a new class. So the Amazon is in there, and the Witch is in there. So if you want to add those into your game for some different themes and character class choices, those are in there as well. And I feel like it just has a lot of super thematic elements in it. And I don't want to talk about too much because we're actually running a Frostbitten and Mutilated game that Lacey's playing in.
No, please carry on.
But there's lots of cool and awesome thematic elements in there that are in every Lamentations product. But I feel like this has they're all really good, but there's a good sprinkling of a lot of different kinds of things in there to get exposed to. Now, as far as is Maze your favorite setting?
No.
No? What is yours?
Blood and Chocolate.
Oh, really? Right
and I almost picked that for where to start.
Oh, yeah, but there's some...
No, that's not even my problem with it. It's just, it's a little bit more kooky than some of the other stuff.
Well, I think you might run into the problem.
It's just in the way that Kyle does things. Mm-hmm. You know, it's horrifically cutesy. Is that a thing?
I think the problem is...
I love it.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's not, not that I feel like it is, like it's not as big as Maze of the Blue Medusa. Oh,
right. So something for bang for your buck kind of a moment.
Right. Like if you want something to really dwell in for a long time, I feel like Maze is a good choice for that. But my favorite setting is definitely Blood and the Chocolate.
Well, the other thing that if you're first getting into the LOTFP, if you're not familiar with like the weird horror elements of it, I feel like you could sort of go off the rails with Blood and the Chocolate if you're not focused on, we have these kind of weird moments in between the two, right? With the pygmies and then the grape thing or whatever, right? Like if you don't stay on target with making sure you're amping up the weirdness and the creepiness, it could go off the rails and just sort of become this hokey, ridiculous thing, which if that's what you're looking for, that's great. But that's not the feel of the weird fantasy, right?
And I feel like it's just kind of a harder sell if you have, it's easy for me because I love
Willy Wonka.
Roald Dahl,
right.
and in his books and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and all of that. So it's easy to sell it to me, but it may not be as easy to sell it to everybody at your table. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It would be at our table because we're all awesome people that know what good stuff is.
Well, we'll really play about anything there is. So my favorite setting is probably Red and Pleasant Land. It's between that and Veins of the Earth, but Veins of the Earth is more of like, I don't know that it's a setting, because it's more just about underground gaming, right?
Right.
And it changed my perception of underground gaming forever. But I think that it's more, it doesn't have the same setting feel to me as like Red and Pleasant Land is like an actual world. Right. This is like Veins of the Earth is something that I take into every game that I run. You know what I mean? But I just really like this sort of weirdness and this, I like the idea, sort of like with Blood and the Chocolate. Willy Wonka is pretty tired. Mm-hmm. But Blood and the Chocolate is awesome. Yes. It's this crazy new take on it, and it's the exact same thing with Alice in Wonderland. That's super tired and super overdone, and yet somehow it's put together in a way that it's just awesome and new and inspiring, and all the weirdness and the art. It's just super fun and cool. I'm just not sure that that's probably the best place to start with LOTFP because it is very different, and sort of using that as an introduction to LOTFP, I don't think is the way to go necessarily, unless you have people that are like super into Alice in Wonderland. In which case,
the same thing. Like if this is their thing, then for sure,
that's totally it. But yeah, if you had to pick a general, broad, sort of more fantasy style thing, I would go with Frostbitten and Mutilated. All right, so listener Phil wants to know what RPGs are on your shelf that you have not talked about yet. There's a couple of them, so I don't know. Do you want to go back and forth with this, or?
I have a stack sitting next to me, and I don't know that. Not to say that we haven't talked about any of these, because I know we've at least mentioned pretty much all of them. But things that I feel like coming up, we give more attention to in the coming episodes, in the coming year.
Right.
So did you want me to?
No, I can go ahead. I'll start. So I recently just got Through the Breach, 2nd edition, which is the Malifaux RPG. So Malifaux started off as a tabletop skirmish war game. And I'm not really big on war games, but I like the idea of the smaller skirmish ones. And the figures are really cool. It's sort of like this steampunk Weird West sort of thing. And the aesthetics of it, the minis are amazing looking, and they're so much fun and cool to look at. And they're very different from any other sort of aesthetic. You can very clearly tell when you look at them, that is Malifaux, right? And so the storyline behind the world is really cool, and they made an RPG. I had the 1st edition, I got it, and it just didn't do it for me. There were some problems with the way the books were put together, and I didn't dig into it the way I probably could have. But the 2nd edition fixes a lot of those problems, and I'm super excited about it. And I just recently got it at Half Price Books, and I'm looking forward to trying to get that to the table for HillCon. So that's one of mine, I guess.
Okay. So one of the books that has been just sort of chilling on our shelf for a while that nobody has done anything with is the Bubblegum Shoe. And we have a lot of kids
right
in our gaming group, and we now have one that's 12 and one that's 13, and then 7 and 8 and on down the line. I don't know that this would be, that great for the really little ones, but I'm interested to get a better look at it and see how it does investigative gaming for kind of the younger crowd. And I think we're kind of in the sweet spot to start doing that now. So I would like to kind of delve into that and get something going with it, and hopefully bring it back to the podcast to maybe do a review and kind of hash out what went well and what didn't.
Just to go back real quick, I guess Through the Breach is made by Weird. I think it's Weird Games or Weird Miniatures, but they're the same people that make Malifaux.
Mm-hmm. Blood in the Chocolate is Kyle Chenier. You mentioned Zach Smith. He does both Frostbitten and Mutilated and Maze of the Blue Medusa. Patrick Stewart also put together Maze of the Blue Medusa. What else? Shadows of Estern is Agate Games, I believe. Agate. It's got like a little green thing on it. What else did we mention? Fate is Evil Hat. Bubblegum Shoe is Evil Hat as well. Einstein is by... Is it Artemis? Artana Games. And Pandemic is that one Z-Man?
It might be. I'm not sure.
You have your phone. Mine's downstairs.
I was looking up something else.
Oh, okay. I don't have mine. I was doing pretty well so far. Vampire the Dark Ages, is that before?
That's White Wolf.
That's White Wolf.
That's
okay.
White Wolf.
I didn't want to mess it up. And then did we mention anybody else?
I don't think so. I think that's probably it.
Oh, the Dracula Dossier.
That's by Pelgrane Press.
Yeah.
And Trail of Cthulhu.
Okay, so there you go. Sorry about that. I want to give credit where credit is due.
True.
And if you're looking to look into any of these games farther, so that's where you would find them, or at least start looking anyway. Oh, Dread. Who does Dread?
Yeah, I'm not sure who produced it, but it's available through Indie.
Oh yeah,
Press
Indie
Revolution.
Press Revolution.
So. All right, so my next one, full disclosure, I got sent this book for free by the publisher, and I just finished watching The Expanse and am way into a sci-fi mood, which is rare for me, and not a magical sci-fi, a more realistic sci-fi. So I have just recently gotten, I've been reading it here the past few days, Shadows over Soul, and that's from Tab Creations, and I haven't talked about it because I literally just got it. So I'm looking to get that one to the table for HillCon as well. That should be a good, fun game. I'm going to do sort of an Expanse style thing with it, and hopefully it is good. Plus, it's a game that doesn't use dice; it uses cards, and I'm always intrigued by games that use cards because I grew up playing cards with my grandpa, so I always enjoy seeing how they work. So
I would say an initial first glance for me, it looked pretty good, and I didn't get a lot of time with it. Probably my favorite thing that I saw in there was that some of the artwork is actually open source images from NASA satellites. So
yeah, of like the planets and stuff.
That was a good
really
choice.
Cool. I was like, wow, that's awesome. So full disclosure, they did send us a copy of that for free, but I'm checking it out. And if it is something that once we get at the table and play it a little bit, if it's something we like and enjoy, we'll let you guys know.
All right. Something else I'd like to look into, it's not necessarily like one specific book, but Ben Robbins does Microscope. And so there have been several other themed games that use a similar system. So there's Microscope Explorer, which is just an expansion for it. And then there's something called Follow, which kind of uses that system to evaluate a specific kind of quest. There's also one that has to do with ancestry, family lineage. There's another one that has to do with kind of like artifacts. So I'd like to look into those a little bit more because I think they could lead to some really interesting creation tools for other games. Right. So especially when you're talking, in games like your Antonius Vault, right? So that's an artifact. In fact, if you wanted to use this to do that, I would be really excited about it. I think it'd be a great idea. I think that these books would be really, really good for creating a mythology to go with your world, which is something we're going to be talking about on the fantasy series anyway, when it comes to world building. So I'd like to delve into that a little bit more.
Very cool. So I just got a couple quick ones. I've got, first off, Aces and Eights. I really like the Wild West stuff. It's got one of the coolest combat systems with the shot clock, how you sort of have a silhouette of a person you're shooting at, and you put a bullseye on what you want to hit, and then you roll a die and draw a card, and that's sort of where the bullet moves from there. So you might be trying to pull off a trick shot and disarm a guy by shooting his gun and accidentally put it through the side of his head and all the fallout that comes from that, or just completely miss. It's an interesting and cool combat thing, and there's nothing I've seen like it. Along the same Western vibe is Dogs in the Vineyard. I know we've mentioned that one a few times here and there. but I would really like to get at the table and try it out and play it. And I think it's really cool. And I would like to try and adapt it to do a gunslinger style thing.
We did do a couple sessions with it. And we started to do the gunslinger thing insofar as we talked about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ever actually got it to the table. So.
Right.
And okay, so my last one for this is the PIP system, the actual core book. So I backed this on Kickstarter. I haven't had a chance to do anything with it. I acquired the actual hard copy book, and it's just kind of like open rule system to do pretty much anything with. So sort of like Fate in that way, I guess. But the system is completely different. And I'm at least vaguely familiar with it because I've run the Infestation. I haven't had a chance to run the Mermaid Adventures yet, but I feel like our daughter would really enjoy that. Yeah. So I will probably be doing that at some point too. But I basically just want to delve into this deeper and see what's there and what all I could use it for. I've got a couple of ideas already, and Carrie's volunteered me for some things with it as well. So just need to get in there and get that done.
Right on.
And that's by Eloy Lasanta.
So next we have listener Julia wants to know, where is everyone else? So perhaps you may have noticed that the last several episodes have basically been me and Lacey, but that's partly because life happens and schedules have been hard, as I have changed jobs. That I'm still doing the same thing, but I'm working in a different place and my schedule has changed. So instead of doing 24-hour shifts and working fewer days, I work 12s now. So
we've actually had 4 people that have, actually everybody at the table has changed jobs since we started.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of adjustment that happens with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, life and bills and children and
school and everything.
Cars
else
have broken down, and
so just basically, it's just been a lot of things have happened, and we're all still gaming together. It's not been that way. It's just our recording time has sort of been kind of sporadic, and when we can fit it in, so that is part of the reason why. But fortunately, things should be starting to slow down for us again towards the end of November, and we look to be getting things put back together to the way they were, and having more of the normal sort of cast of hosts here. So,
all right. I feel like we missed one here. Okay. So Austin asked us, what advice do you wish you had been given when you started the podcast?
Mine would be the amount of time it takes to edit episodes.
It's not really like advice. It's just
I think I wish that I would have had someone tell me to start sooner. I was really hesitant to get things going because I thought it was it is a big project, but I thought it was more to take on than what it is. And I think part of that is because, one, I enjoy it and I'm dedicated to it, so it makes it easier because I enjoy doing it. But I do wish that we had gotten started sooner, because I had been mulling this idea around for quite a while and just didn't pull the trigger.
So something that we just started doing recently was actually putting all of our episodes in a place where everyone could see them and show ideas. And I think that's going to be really helpful. Somebody probably at the beginning should have been like, hey, it would be useful if all of your hosts were able to see what you've already talked about and some of the things you plan on talking about.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So yeah, writing them in a notebook is good. Definitely, if you didn't think you needed to, you're like, oh no, I'm going to remember everything I've talked about. You won't.
No.
So keep it somewhere. If you're doing that, at least that's a good start. But probably digital tools are your friend.
Right on. All right, so Rachel asks, I'm really enjoying the Night Witch's actual play. How long will it run for? And do you have an end in mind?
I have an end in mind in which I successfully win the war for Mother Russia and go home and get married and make borscht.
So how long the game will run is that there are 6 different battle stations that you play through the course of Night Witches. So the plan is to play through all 6 of those, and we'll just sort of see how that goes and if we make it that far.
Number 3?
We just finished number 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're technically halfway. So now the real trouble should begin. So we'll see how that goes. And I think the one thing that I am scared of is that now that we've had characters that have been around so long, is if they start dying off, which is bound to start to happen now as the stakes get higher, that the storyline will start to kind of flounder a little bit. And if that starts to happen, we may not make it through all the way through 6. We'll just have to see how that goes, though. As far as an end in mind, the war will end. But that game is largely improvised on my part. And I know I harp on about running games with an end in mind, but this one structurally has an end to it. So I don't have an end in mind for necessarily the character story arcs, but for the overall game I do. So
I feel like we kind of answered this one already. Kim asked,
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite moment in World of Darkness, playing or running? I mean, you picked World of Darkness games for, and then I cut you off and was like, no, that doesn't count because you didn't run anything. So I think we already know what your opinion is. I do have a favorite moment in World of Darkness running a game, and that is in the game that I ran for you and Kurt. So it was Reconstruction era New Orleans, and you guys were playing Mortals, and you met vampires, and it was kind of Dracula-esque, right? So there was like the ominous vampire that had basically like some kind of infatuation with these sisters, and you guys were involved with one of them. Well, one of you was involved romantically with her. The other one was more just like sort of a businessy relationship type issue. Anyways, basically what happened is those two sisters got turned into vampires as well. You guys went to go investigate more into that, and I just had one of them just brutally murder both of you within a matter of minutes. And
then it sort of evolved into a wraith thing.
And it evolved into a wraith thing from there. But I just remember because Kurt has never been big on World of Darkness and never been big on Vampire either. And it had a profound impact on him. And he was just like so astounded. Oh, what? Wait, I'm dead? Like, that's it?
No, that's never it.
Like, yeah, like you're a human and that was a vampire. I can let you shoot her 2 or 3 more times if you like, but this is going to end the same way.
Yeah. If it will help your morale, feel free.
My friend, you are a chipmunk and she is a coyote.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a very powerful illustration of the different levels of power involved in those two kinds of figures. Right. So, and there was no animosity about it. So it wasn't like wicked GM. I killed you all, TPK. Right. Now I'm going to go drink a beer and eat some Cheetos kind of thing. Like it was impactful. So.
Right. Cameron asks us, do you have any more interviews scheduled that you can talk about? So we don't really talk about the interviews that we have scheduled.
Last time I did, I jinxed the thing and the interview didn't happen.
Yeah, so scheduling
we do
conflicts
have one coming up on Saturday, and that's solidly going to happen.
Right.
So that interview is going to be with Jonathan Tweet. We did an interview with James Raggi at Gen Con and Jonathan Tweet. So we're going to be bringing him back, except that the topic is going to be completely different this time. So we're going to be talking about his book, Grandmother Fish, which is actually a children's book, and kind of touching a little bit on kids and gaming, basically.
And we have another interview set up, but that one will be recorded in November. So we just generally don't talk about our interviews and what they're going to happen with, because scheduling things happen and sometimes things are hard to put together and whatever. So we don't want to get anybody's hopes up and then have to dash them because things didn't happen to come together or whatever. And at Gen Con, we just sort of see who we can get to sit down with us. And sometimes there's emailing beforehand, but Gen Con is so busy that stuff can change on a moment's notice as well. So generally, we try not to say anything not because of some giant secret, but more because that we don't want to build up hopes and then not be able to deliver. So sort of where that comes from. So, but our goal now is to do one interview a month because we don't want to change the entire format of the show. But I really enjoy talking to different game designers and asking different things and hearing why they do what they do and that kind of stuff. So look for more of that to come in the future, hopefully one a month if we can sort of maintain that. So if you are a game designer and you would like to come and you listen to us and you like to come on, feel free to DM us on Twitter or email me, James, at JustWarmFix, and we'll see if we can't get some put together.
Tim asks, you talk about HillCon a lot. What does a normal HillCon consist of? A normal HillCon? I think we've had enough HillCons to happen.
Yeah, I just kind of laughed at that. So I think this is number 3, right?
Okay, so normal HillCon consists of anywhere from like 3 to 4 groups of people that come over to our house. So that could be one, single individual like my brother, or that could be an entire family like Dave, Haley, and their 2 boys. So a family unit, whatever that consists of,
right.
About 3 to 4 of those at any given time come over to our house, and we play games starting Friday evening through about Sunday morning, early Sunday afternoon.
Right.
And then everybody takes off. So then, everything that goes along with that, other than just playing games. So, there's also the feeding of all of those people for however many meals I think this time we're doing soup, crockpot soup.
Right on. Well, it's interesting because when you do that kind of stuff, you don't want to spend a ton of time cooking. So you want to do something that's easy. So it's usually something that goes in the pressure cooker or in the crock pots so that we can just sort of set it up, walk away, and game.
There's
and come back
a
and
lot
eat.
of behind the scenes food planning that goes on as far as drinks, the alcoholic variety, and then snacks and just food for all the people. So.
And then as far as gaming goes, usually we have every year that we've done things, we've gotten more and more games played. The first year we played, a decent amount of games, but then it was like the next time was like, I want to play more games this time. Because we set,
oh my gosh. I should have picked that Cultists versus Investigators game is my favorite game played.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't know. Oh, that's a toss up. That game was really good though. Yeah. That was a really good idea that I had.
Air high five to Kurt across the state. Good job. Thank you, Kurt.
I get to be in a high five too. It was my plan. I had a moment of gaming genius.
I was thinking about this the other day. We that was the moment last year that was like the big crowning achievement that we did. And we don't have one this year, so I don't know what that would be, and we don't have a lot of time to put it together
because we have more people. Like Dave ran his first the Fallout game for the first time at HillCon, right? And I think that was the first
game he ever ran.
RPG that he ran. And so now he's working on a one-shot of Kids on Bikes, which I'm pretty excited about. And Kurt's got a Trail of Cthulhu one-shot that he's working on. I'm probably going to put together a Dread situation just because that's easy and I can throw that together. And
I would like to run my Worms game one more time. I think that's probably going to be my final sort of alpha playtest for that scenario. And then I want to put it together and have some people that we know, give it to them and say, hey, can you run this and see what feedback I can get? And then put that up on the Patreon. And when it's all finalized and put together and start to figure out artwork for it and stuff. So my plan is to run that. And then, because we have some people that'll be here that haven't played in it yet. So I know usually we end up having more than one game going at a time sometimes because there are quite a few people here. Fortunately, we have a good sized house that we can sort of have everybody here and the space to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we do a lot of board games too. So sometimes if you're running an RPG session and ideally we like 4 to 5, maybe 6. But when you get any more than that, it starts to be really unbalanced. So we kind of have people say at the beginning like, okay, well, I want 4 to 5 for this. And then whoever ends up sitting out, one is usually in charge of doing whatever the food situation is going to be for the next meal that's happening. Because you figure RPG session, you're looking at 3 to 5 hours. So by then it's time to feed the crew again.
Right.
And also a board game. So.
Right. I'm also looking to do Degenesis to continue that because we played that last year. I'm going to take that into the Black Atlantic book. I would like to run the Shadows over Soul one time and maybe some Through the Breach. So I'm sort of the glutton for punishment when it comes to running games. I usually have several of them ready.
I feel like every KillCon we do Monster Hearts though.
We do, and I thought about that as well.
I mean, if we had like one RPG tradition, I guess that would have to be it because it's the only consistent factor through all of the HillCons.
I've got it. I still have all the character sheets, so we could totally bust it out. It's ready to go. So I saw when I was looking at the books on the shelf the other day, I was like, oh, Monster Hearts. That may have to happen. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so our final question is from Sarah. You guys have talked about and promoted your indie RPG game days a lot, and we never hear how they go. So have you guys been successful? So we have ran several of them, and the first couple were kind of small because obviously you're building something new, but we did have enough people to run a couple different games. And so, yes, they have largely been successful. Lacey has probably had the most success that we know of because she inspired someone to buy and run Bedlam Hall at ISUCon, which is if that's how you way awesome.
Success, then I guess.
I think that's a pretty good bar to measure it by. And we have introduced a lot of people to a lot of different games they may not have played because.
So we set up usually 2 to 3 games. And depending on who shows up, how many players we get, and what the interest is, we will run usually 1 or 2 of them. So we don't, I think we have yet to run all 3. Well, we did run 3 when Kurt did Puppet Land, but it's because Lee and I played Puppet Land and then ended up transitioning to Numenera after that. So I guess so far we have run 7C, Puppet Land, Numenera, Blood in the Chocolate, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Bedlam Hall,
Spirit of 77,
Dread, and Mashed, and Quiet Year. Am I forgetting anything else? 10. I mean, that's 10 RPGs that I don't think Numenera, that guy had played it before and ran it before.
Right.
But it's a bigger press name. That's, that's Monty Cook Games. That's significant.
Right.
But the rest are pretty much small press RPGs. And I don't think anybody had played any of them before.
And we've really introduced a lot of people to the indie RPG games, which has been really awesome because obviously
that was the goal.
There's lots of D&D and lots of Pathfinder, and that's great. I'm glad they're out there because that's what gets a lot of people into gaming. But there's a lot more games out there that are great and deserve some attention. And so, yes, I would say that we have been successful in sort of what we set out to do, which was just introduce people to games. And it's been a lot of fun. And I kind of had an ulterior motive to doing this because it's a little less pressure running games at the game store than it is like at a convention. So it was sort of a way to get used to doing that, because I really had a good time at HoosierCon running those 2 games and got a lot of great feedback, and I had great players and they said they had a great time. So it's been a lot of fun to do that and sort of get used to doing that, because it is a big hurdle to overcome, sort of running for a group of complete strangers that are there specifically to come to play your game you provide them fun.
I don't think we talked about this on the podcast either. I was so nervous when I ran that Bedlam Hall game that I didn't realize until it was over that I ran the entire game standing up. I never once sat down at the table.
Right.
I was just like handing stuff out and then never sat down. And then I think it worked really well, though, because you kind of have like, first of all, I'm short, so it's not like I'm imposing when I'm standing up. There's maybe only like a 4-inch difference between me sitting at that table and standing.
Yeah.
But it's more commanding, and I feel like everybody paid attention really well. I don't know that was intentional, but
what else is interesting about it is when
it's more of like a performance and like a. Not like giving a speech, but like public speaking.
Right.
Well,
something that I noticed is that you ran that game and I wasn't close enough to be able to hear specifically the story that you were telling and that everybody was playing and having a good time with. But being across the room and watching, me and Carrie were playing Lanterns, and it was very clear to tell by smiles and laughter and the moments of, where the shock and awe happens at a table. And it's interesting now because watching it happen when I'm not running my own games or whatever, it's fun to see that's a game that's doing well right now, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see it, and more importantly, you can hear it. And it never occurred to me till I ran 7th Sea, which 7th Sea, to be fair, is an easy sell. It's high adventure, high action. It's pirates and musketeers. You couldn't ask for an easier time at having fun, right? The only thing that might be easier is Spirit of 77 because it's so ridiculous. But when I ran that game, everyone was just having a great time and laughing. And I had an on day and I had a great setup and the game was easy to run anyway. And when I got done, there was this moment with everyone where it was like, man, like must have been a great game. And I was, realized, man, that was really fun. And I guess there's a certain thing of exposing people to games. It's sort of like a different kind of feel good about running a game. You know what I mean?
I feel better, even better about it when it goes well at these things, because I know, like, okay, this is a game you've never heard of before, and now there's a chance you're going to play it again. Mm-hmm. And if there's a chance that maybe you can play a similar RPG, you might play that too. So it's like if I really nail it, I'm doing good for me, but I'm also doing good for this game.
Right. And the whole reason we started the Indie RPG thing was that I thought we started the podcast because I wanted to do something to add to gaming, and I wanted to try and make things better and have a good time and whatever. And then at a certain point, I realized we did a lot of talking, but not a lot of doing. And if you want to make things better, you got to do. And I thought, well, what better way to do than to go run games? And we didn't have a local game store in Terre Haute for a long time, and we've never really had one in Danville. And now that we did, it's a really nice store, and we want to support it. And I thought, what better way to support things and try and help grow smaller press games that are great than to actually go out and do it. So that's sort of where it all came from. And I think that by that measurement, we've been successful. So I'm super happy with it, and we're still doing it. So something must be going right. So right on. Well, I thought just 100th episode. What is your favorite moment about the podcast that we've had so far? Whether it's here recording or our actual plays or anything, do you have a favorite moment that you've had?
I think it's probably the interviews.
Yeah.
Interviewing Stacey was just so much fun. They're just really easy to talk to, and that was the first person that I reached out
Right. Right.
to, just me. And I was really excited to hear back and actually be able to sit down and get that together. And I had actual questions in mind and was like, I don't know. I was really excited to be able to do that. And it went really well.
Right. Well, you set it all up, which was very cool because it's one thing that we're all like, we all sit here and do stuff and whatever. But I really like the idea of when everybody that's been on the show sort of like takes some initiative and is like, hey, let's do this. And it's like, yeah, you're excited about it. I'm excited about it. Great. And I got to say, all the interviews that we have done have been great and gone very well and been easy. But Stacy might be the easiest person I've ever sat down and talked with as a complete stranger. Just super laid back, chilled out, easy to talk to, great time, and I'm super excited for the Watchmaker game. I had heard about it through the grapevine before, but I was like, that sounds epic, you know? And so yeah, that was a awesome time and just a great time, you know, and moment for us at Gen Con. I had a good time with it and it was so much fun.
And I feel like that's the second time where we've just sort of, not even the second time, like we just seem to stumble into accidental awesomeness. Because, well, I mean, just interviewing Raji and Zach and Patrick would be awesome in and of itself, right? But to do it after the Ennies when they're all like
all high on life and like, flying high and doing
was just awesome, you know. And it's kind of the same thing with Stacy. We sat down to do that interview, and it was at this pivotal moment for Contessa, and they were having this big shift in direction. And there's another thing that I thought was really great is I can sit down and I can ask you about this, and now it's not hearsay and it's these people saying this and these people saying that. Like, this is you're making these decisions and I'm asking you these questions and you're the one that's telling me this is what's really going on.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of value in something like that.
I thought it was really cool when we were sitting there and we're in the middle of Contessa and we're having this conversation about what have you done and contributions to gaming and all this stuff. And it's like, we're right here. Like, you built all this. This is pretty awesome. You know, it was a really cool kind of moment where sitting back and like looking around as we're recording this and doing it. It was very cool. It was a cool moment because it's not the same as writing games. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's building a community, right. Which when you're writing games and you put out a great game, you sort of are building a community, but not in the same way as Contessa built a community, right?
Right.
It's very cool to see that because gaming has changed a lot and it's always been sort of this closed off culture of like, no, this is my table and my group, and there's this sort of barrier there or whatever. And I think conventions have opened up a little bit more, but then Contessa is very, very welcoming about come play games and come sit down and let's have a good time and tell good stories and whatever.
I mean, I am not self-important at all, but I like that in some small way we have the ability to shine a light on things that are good in the RPG industry.
Right.
Lamentations of the Flame Princess makes really good RPG products, right. And they are very respectful with the people that work for them. And if, you know, all of the designers that talk about stuff like that and writers and artists and stuff talk about how great it is to work with them. And I'm glad that we can give even a small amount of voice to that. And Contessa is doing wonderful things in, you know, diversity in the gaming community and creating safe spaces and giving people voices that may not otherwise have them. And
bringing people into gaming.
Right. And the fact that we can provide any kind of platform to make that more well-known is wonderful. So, yeah.
Right on. So I agree with all of that. I'm going to go a little more selfish on my favorite moment is I like to argue.
Oh, no.
Surprise, surprise, right? So I don't have one necessarily specific favorite moment, but mine encompasses all that we have done. I like to sit down and discuss things and argue. I mean, argue might be too strong of a word, but where we sit down and we disagree about things and we sort of talk out and maybe we agree or maybe we don't at the end of it. But I like sort of talking about things that way because it sort of sharpens what I want to do and the games that I want to run and the ideas that I have. They get sharpened by having those discussions. And I don't think a lot of the ideas that I have had and inspiration that I've had now would have happened without this. And so I guess that has been my favorite larger moment or whatever. And I think just to tie back to the other thing with the indie game days is that like that's been very cool in my mind. That's one of my favorite things that we've done so far is we actually went out and did something. Like I said, talking is one thing, but doing is another. And physically going out and doing things has been really awesome. Part of my goal also was about talking about it was that hopefully we might inspire other people then to go out and be like, I like this small RPG and I'm passionate about it and I like it and I want to run it for other people and go do it. And hope maybe inspire some more people to get into that kind of thing. So I guess that would be my...
Yeah, and since we started, we've run games at conventions and at the game store. So it's all new stuff.
Right on.
Cool. And the actual plays, that's a new thing.
Oh yeah, holy crap.
And that's not even something we remotely considered when we started out.
No, not at all.
Just kind of, really that's Kyle's fault. I mean, if we're being really honest,
right,
Mr. Chenier.
Yeah. So we played Blood in the Chocolate with Kyle the first time, and then I thought, well, maybe it isn't that hard. Maybe we can give it a shot. And then we did a couple test recordings that sort of haven't made it out, and then we ended up doing Night Witches, which has been, I think that probably is my favorite moment with the podcast. Actually,
We did the Tin Candles one got released, didn't it?
Yeah, we did do that one, but. The Night Witches game has just been so much fun. It's challenged me in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different voices at the table that I'm not used to having, and it's changed the game a lot. And I think that is probably my single favorite thing that we may have done, actually, because that's a game that I look forward to. And I'm trying to I know we need to have something recorded by this time so I can get things put together and edited and whatever. So it's been a lot of fun. Alrighty, well, I think we'll probably draw this thing to a close. So. Just again, thank you so much to everyone out there for all the support that you guys have shown us, in whatever way that has been. As always, you guys can support us at Patreon. There's the Facebook group. You can follow us on Twitter. You can review us, all those great and awesome things. You can email us, whatever. Really, really have had an amazing time in the past 100 episodes and reviews and all that kind of stuff. So I know we didn't really solicit questions across the podcast which is how most of you encounter us. So if you guys do have questions, you can always email them to James at Just One More Fix, or you can DM me or post them on Facebook or whatever. And we've been discussing things there on Facebook, and then a lot of times things might develop into a full episode depending on what it comes from, or sort of where that discussion goes. But we have lots of awesome stuff planned for the future. More going to continue with the Night Witches actual play, and then we'll see once that concludes where we go with our actual play, because we're only going to do one at a time because there's a fair amount of editing and commitment that goes into that, and it's a lot of work. And I don't mind doing it, but to do another one would probably be too much. We mentioned already in more interviews and then more regular episodes from us, and hopefully getting back to reviews because.
I didn't mention it, not to brag. I have 41 days of school left. So coming from me specifically, I am going to be probably taking over most of the blog for more regular blog posts coming to you soon.
And if they wanted to find those, where would they be at?
Well, they would be at justonемorefix.com.
Awesome.
Of course. Maybe even /blog. I don't know, but go to justonемorefix.com and you'll find it. And then I will be finishing up the poison tool to go along with our trauma tool. So if you're not on Patreon, the trauma tool is really awesome, and I wish that you would be able to see it. So you should go back us on Patreon so that you can be a part of that. And then the Dread game I started is probably, I'm going to go with 75% of the way done. So I will be finishing that up in the next, probably by the time Thanksgiving rolls around. You can look for those two things to be finishing and hitting the Patreon.
Mm-hmm. I also mentioned that I'm finishing up my playtest of my Worms game, the creepy creature feature body horror session that we brainstormed several episodes ago. And that'll be going up there as Patreon as well. Once the alpha is done, I'm going to sort of put it together without any artwork and then put that up on the Patreon as well. And I think I mentioned interviews already, so we should have more of those coming to you guys. But lots of great things coming. And then hopefully we will be at several conventions this year running games and hopefully meeting you guys and getting out there. Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you guys for 100 episodes. Wow. Really,
kind of weird, isn't it?
You're all still here. And there's more of you, too. So that's neat. Neat. Who says that, honestly? We are giving out dice syringes to some of the folks that submitted questions. So if you submitted a question, be picking those names. So keep an eye on your inboxes, social media accounts, however it is you send us your question. Keep an eye out there to see if you'll be getting one of those, and we'll get those sent out shortly. Those are also available to Patreon backers at certain levels too. So if you're really jealous and would like to be having one of those, well, you could get one that way too.
Right on.
Apparently, I'm all about Patreon promotion today.
As you guys know, we are a member of the Gunny Geek Network, so you can find all kinds of awesome podcasts and episodes for different geek topics there. Then you can find them at gunnygeeknetwork.com. As always, you guys can support us and find us at justformorefix.com. You can support us at patreon.com/justformorefix. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, all of the social media places. And you can also support us by giving us a rating and review at iTunes, Google Play, or wherever else it is that you find us at. And as always, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/justonemorefix or follow us on Twitter at justonemorefix.